Well, my colleague Andrew Carswell revealed a huge blow-up today between Michaelia Cash, who said she was forced to walk out of a meeting with her counterpart in the government, Attorney-General Mark Dreyfus. This was all over Labor's religious freedom legislation. After the meeting, here was Michaelia Cash. She said, "I was appalled by Mr Dreyfus's behaviour. Mr Dreyfus needs to stop playing games with his religious discrimination legislation. As I told Dreyfus, he needs to take on board the feedback he has received from the faith communities and release his legislation publicly." All right, let's bring in tonight's panel and let's start with Headline Advisory Director and former Media Advisor to Scott Morrison, Andrew Carswell. Andrew, what do you make of this debate and which side of it do you agree with?
Well, I certainly know, Sharri, who I would back in that verbal stoush, and it's not the great pomposity that is the Attorney-General. I think Michaelia's made a good stand here, and she's made a righteous stand here, and excuse the pun on that. She's made a stand against what is an increasing secrecy within the government when it comes to the formation of its policies. It gets all these people to come in and sign non-disclosure agreements, and it won't release these details in public. And now it's begging for the coalition to sign up to this deal without it being made public on religious discrimination bill, without even having a look at it. They want to have a bipartisanship approach all of a sudden because they want to get it off the table. They don't want to fight. They want to fight any issues in the next 6 to 12 months in the lead up to this election. So good on Michaelia for taking up the fight here and pushing back on what is creeping, secretive behaviour by this government.
I mean, we've seen that secrecy, Andrew, in so many different pieces of legislation now. I mean, in Tanya Plibersek's nature-positive legislation, industry groups had to leave their phones and laptops outside the room when they went in to even look at the legislation. Liz, this secrecy, especially about legislation that's categorically in the public interest and that should be ventilated and debated in public. I mean, this secrecy is designed just to protect the government.
Indeed, and this is a government that was elected on ad nauseum promises of transparency. Our middle name's going to be transparency, particularly with regards to something as important as religious discrimination, which many faith groups are extremely worried about this because what we've been told was going to be in it previously, obviously this has been battered around for years now, was simply not going to cut the mustard. Personally, I think it's absolutely appalling that government is taking it upon themselves to dictate what Christian schools can and can't do, who they can and can't hire, making it issues of discrimination instead of just allowing religious groups, faith bodies to decide for themselves how to practice their ethos, how to practice their values. And what seems very obvious every time this comes up, it's the same religious bodies, namely Christians and Catholics, that are getting whacked by it. They're not laying down the law on, say, Muslim schools, which obviously they would never expect to hire someone who doesn't uphold their ethos. It's always the Judeo-Christian values that seem to be getting the short end of the stick whenever this particular government talks about making laws around these things.